see a lot of people online talking about this immigrant issue, and they either don't have kids or they don't think it could happen to their kids. Their idea is, hey, shouldn't have fucking come over here. You get those kind of people. Broke the law. Shouldn't have fucking come over here if your kid, you didn't want to get your kid separated. If you were in the presence of a woman who came over here from Guatemala and she's poor and she's starving and they're taking her baby away and she's wailing and screaming from a primal place in her DNA that the one thing she loves more than anything is being taken away. A baby.
Yeah.
If that doesn't freak you the fuck out, you're not a part of the team, man. You're missing it. You're missing it. What do we hear?
In a move that stunned many of his most loyal listeners, Joe Rogan fired off a scathing rebuke aimed directly at a portion of his own fan base. The outspoken podcaster, often seen as aligned with right-wing and libertarian viewpoints, drew a hard moral line during a recent episode. But this time he wasn't talking about vaccines or cancel culture. Instead, Rogan took aim at the immigration hardliners within the MAGA movement, the very crowd that once cheered him on. If this is your stance, he warned, I don't want you on the team. And that was just the beginning. Rogan's voice wasn't angry, it was wounded. You could hear it. The betrayal wasn't political, it was human.
What are we here for? We're here for 100 years of whatever. That's what we're here for. If you want to spend 100 years saying, hey, shouldn't have fucking broke the law, I don't want you on the team. You're an asshole, right? And I don't give a fuck if you're right or left. I don't care if you're religious, or I don't care if you're an atheist. If that's what you support, you're an asshole. And we don't want you on our team. And I don't give a fuck if they broke the law. You don't take parents and kids and separate them. You just fucking don't. It's disgusting. If you're saying, well, they shouldn't have broke the law. Maybe they shouldn't have broke the law. You don't get to do something that's 1,000 times worse than crossing a line in the dirt. That fucking imaginary line of the dirt, crossing that is nothing in comparison to your crime of stealing a baby from its mother. That's fucking insane.
He called out the MAGA crowd for cheering policies that tore families apart at the border. These weren't hardened criminals, he explained. These were poor, desperate parents trying to survive. And yet, there were people clapping, applauding the government for ripping children from their mother's arms. Rogan didn't mince words. Assholes, he said bluntly. This wasn't a hot take. This was a man drawing a line in the sand. If that's your ideology, I want nothing to do with you. To Rogan, politics had nothing to do with this. It was about decency. The idea that anyone could rationalize separating a screaming child from a helpless mother made him sick. You're missing the whole point of being human, he said. He wasn't just angry.
The rebels are Republicans now. They're like, you want to be a rebel, you want to be punk rock, you want to buck the system, you're a conservative now. That's how crazy. And then the liberals are now pro silencing criticism. They're pro censorship online. They're talking about regulating free speech and they're regulating the First Amendment. It's bananas to watch.
Joe, they come after their political opponent.
Well,
I got more guys. I always say, I kid, but I'm not kidding. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the meanest of them all. He'd kill you in 2 seconds if he didn't like you, right? I've been under investigation more than Alphonse Capone, only because it's political opponent stuff. And I've won. I won the big case in Florida. I'm winning the other stuff. You win, but you know what they did? They did something that's only done in third world countries. They came after their political opponent.
Yes.
I could have put crooked Hillary in jail.
Well, not only that, but they're now weaponizing it by saying that that's what you're going to do once you get in office.
Isn't it great?
By ignoring what they're doing right now. It's crazy.
I heard it. Somebody was defending me today. They said, no, they said, that's what you're doing to him. They're going, he's going to put us in jail. He's going to invest.
That's what you're doing.
That's what you're doing to him.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, will you do that? Will you do that to him, to them, if you win? The presidency has tremendous power. I could have put crooked Hillary.
I respected that you didn't, because what you said was it would be bad for the country.
He was disappointed. Rogan told his millions of listeners that those supporting this cruelty were no longer welcome. "You're not on the team anymore," he declared. It was personal. He wasn't talking to strangers. He was talking to the people who built his audience. And he just told them to get lost. Online comments, Rogan said, had become a cesspool of dehumanization. He spoke about how people treat immigration like some video game leaderboard, cold, calculated, and void of empathy. "I see these posts," he said, "and it's always the same. Shouldn't have come here, broke the law." But for Rogan, it wasn't that simple. It was never that simple. He was furious that people couldn't imagine these immigrants as parents, as human beings. "You think this can't happen to your kids?" he asked. His voice dropped, almost like a warning. "You're living in a fantasy." Rogan mimicked the cold logic used by immigration hardliners. "You broke the law. Shouldn't have come here." It was the same tired refrain, repeated over and over online. But he wasn't having it. "That line doesn't make you right," he snapped. "It makes you heartless. It makes you blind to what's actually happening." Rogan emphasized that behind every undocumented parent is a story: poverty, fear, starvation. And when they get here, all they get is punishment, no second chance, no compassion, just separation. The audience fell silent, because whether they agreed or not, the image was unforgettable. Then came the image that broke him. Rogan painted the scene in agonizing detail: a starving mother from Guatemala falling to her knees as U.S. agents take her baby. "She's not acting," he said. "She's wailing from her DNA." You could hear the pain in his voice. This wasn't about politics anymore. It was about something primal. Rogan asked his audience a simple question: how could you watch that and not feel something? The silence on the other side of the microphone was deafening, and that was the point. Some had lost the ability to feel, and Rogan knew it. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't add qualifiers or conditions. It was raw, pure horror. "A baby," he emphasized. "They're taking her baby." The primal instinct of a mother being violated. That's what this had become. Not a policy debate, not a headline, but a nightmare. He described the screams, the wails, the helplessness. It wasn't just heartbreaking, it was soul-crushing. Rogan's tone shifted into something deeper, grief maybe, a sense that something sacred was being destroyed. "And if that doesn't freak you the fuck out," he warned, "then something's broken in you, and you don't belong here." There was no longer room for moral ambiguity. "You're missing it," Rogan repeated, like a mantra. "You're missing the entire point." He sounded like a man watching society unravel, horrified that others weren't seeing it. His podcast, usually a haven for freewheeling debate, became a courtroom, and his listeners were on trial. The crime? Indifference. He didn't care how tough your politics were. If you could watch a family get destroyed and still say, "Well, they shouldn't have come here," then you were lost. Rogan had seen enough. He wasn't asking for agreement. He was demanding basic humanity. Then came the existential gut punch. "What are we even here for?" Rogan asked. His voice cracked, not from rage, but something closer to despair. He wasn't just confronting his audience, he was confronting the meaning of life itself. "We get 100 years, give or take," he said, "and you want to spend them justifying tearing kids from their parents?" It was no longer about policy or patriotism. It was about time, how little of it we have and how easily we waste it. The moment hung heavy in the air. Was this who we had become? Rogan hammered the point home. We don't get to waste life on cruelty. You really want to spend your time being the person who says they broke the law while a kid screams for his mom? He asked. His words cut like knives, sharp, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. I don't want you on my team, he said again, firmer this time. He was building something more than a podcast. He was drawing moral boundaries, and he was done entertaining those who couldn't cross the simplest one of all: compassion. The room was no longer neutral. Lines were drawn. You could be left, right, religious, atheist. I don't care, Rogan said flatly. If that's your stance, you're an asshole. There was no wiggle room. He didn't care about tribal identity. What mattered was how you treated people at their most vulnerable. There were no exceptions. Rogan's audience, diverse and often divided, had never heard him speak like this, but there was no backing down. He wasn't looking for applause. He was issuing a moral ultimatum. No more neutrality. No more political shield. If you supported separating children from their parents, you were the problem. End of story. The usual excuses didn't work here. But they broke the law, some might argue. Rogan wasn't having it. I don't give a key, he snapped. That line, he said, had become a cover for sadism. The ability to look at a devastated family and feel nothing but smug superiority? That was rot. That was decay. Rogan wanted to rip off the mask, because behind the law and order arguments was something darker, a willingness to dehumanize. You, just king don't, he repeated. You don't take a child from a parent. Not for a border. Not for politics. Never. Crossing the border might be illegal, but to Rogan, it wasn't evil. Evil was the act of taking a screaming baby from their mother. That's 1,000 times worse, he said. That imaginary line in the dirt means nothing compared to that crime. You could hear the disbelief in his voice, disbelief that anyone would see those two acts as equal. For Rogan, one was survival, the other was state-sponsored trauma. And the people who couldn't tell the difference? They weren't patriots. They were complicit in something monstrous, something history would never forget or forgive. Rogan's voice dropped to a whisper. You just don't do that, he said. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't up for debate. The state should never steal children as punishment. It's disgusting, he added. He didn't care about immigration status or legal nuance. A line had been crossed. And once that line is crossed, the system itself becomes immoral. He didn't care how justified it looked on paper. On a human level, it was abhorrent. No law, no border, no political party could make it right. We don't want you on the team, Rogan repeated. And he meant every word. Despite past appearances, at UFC events with Donald Trump, Rogan didn't hesitate to call out the former president directly. In April, he described Trump's deportation tactics as horrific, especially when they targeted people with no criminal history. It's scary, Rogan admitted, that non-criminals are being rounded up and sent to El Salvador prisons. The thought haunted him. It was like watching a machine chew up people who were already broken. Rogan wasn't defending open borders. He was demanding a just system, one that knew the difference between a threat and a victim. The difference, he feared, was being forgotten. Rogan ended on a chilling note. Let's get the gang members out. Everybody agrees. But he warned that when innocent people, like gay hairdressers, as he put it, get lumped in with criminals, the whole system collapses. The audience sat in silence. It was no longer a podcast, it was a reckoning. Rogan had issued a challenge: grow a conscience or get out. His voice cracked, not from fatigue, but from the weight of truth. We're better than this, he whispered. And if we're not, maybe it's already too late.